The champagne bubbles caught the light from my parents' chandelier as I set the glass down on the linen tablecloth. 43 people had gone silent in the span of 2 seconds. Grace still rents a studio, Brooke had announced, her voice carrying across the anniversary party with that particular pitch she reserved for maximum humiliation. In Capitol Hill. Can you imagine? At 32. Everyone had laughed. Cousin Jennifer. Aunt Martha. Even Mom's book club friends who barely knew me. I'd been standing near the dessert table wearing the Armani blazer I'd bought last month. The one that cost more than Brooke's entire outfit. My little sister had positioned herself in the center of the living room, holding court like she always did, her engagement ring catching every light in the room. "I own the building," I said. The words came out calm. Measured. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "You what?" Brooke's face went from flushed with champagne and victory to the color of old snow. "What are you talking about?" "The building I live in," I repeated, picking my glass back up and taking a slow sip. "I bought it 18 months ago. 8 units. I live in the penthouse. The other 7 generate about $12,000 a month in rental income." Dad had been carving the anniversary cake. The knife clattered against the serving plate. "You're lying," Brooke said. Her voice had gone high and thin. "You work retail. You told us you work at that tech store." "I told you I work in tech," I corrected. "You decided that meant retail. The thing about being underestimated your entire life is that you stop correcting people. You stop explaining. You just let them think what they want to think while you build your empire in silence." I'm Grace Chin. 32 years old. Senior Product Director at Cascade Technologies, one of Seattle's fastest-growing SaaS companies. I make $167,000 a year, not counting my stock options or the rental income from my property portfolio. Brooke is 28. She's a part-time social media coordinator for a wellness brand that sells overpriced essential oils. She lives with her fiancé in a 1-bedroom apartment in Ballard that his parents helped them pay for. But Brooke has always been the golden child. "How much did you pay?" Brooke asked. Her hands were shaking. She'd set down her champagne glass, and a small pool of liquid was forming on the side table. "For the building?" I smiled. $1.2 million. I put down $300,000 and got a commercial loan for the rest. The rental income covers the mortgage and property management fees, with about $4,000 left over every month. Aunt Martha was staring at me like I'd just announced I was joining the circus. Cousin Jennifer had her phone out, probably already Googling property records. Mom finally found her voice. "Grace, why didn't you tell us?" "I did tell you," I said. "Last Thanksgiving. I said I'd bought an investment property. You said, 'That's nice, dear,' and then spent 20 minutes talking about Brooke's engagement photos." The memory was crystal clear. Mom hadn't even looked up from her phone, scrolling through the pictures of Brooke posing on a beach in Maui, the trip her fiancé's parents had paid for. Dad cleared his throat. "Grace, this is quite a surprise." "Is it?" I met his eyes. "I've been sending you both $500 a month for the past 3 years. To help with the mortgage after Dad's hours got cut." The room had gone so quiet I could hear the ice melting in someone's drink. $18,000, I continued. "Total. I have the bank transfer records if you want to see them." Mom's face had gone pale. "We thought. Brooke said she was helping us with that." "Brooke." I looked at my sister. She was gripping the back of a chair, her knuckles white. "Brooke, have you been telling them you were the one sending money?" "I help them," Brooke said quickly. "I help with other things." "Like what?" I asked. The question came out sharper than I intended. 3 years of swallowed comments, 3 years of watching my sister take credit for my generosity, 3 years of being treated like the family disappointment while I quietly paid their bills. Brooke's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "Grace, this isn't the time," Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was looking at Brooke with an expression I'd never seen before. Something like confusion mixed with disappointment. "When is the time?" I asked. "Christmas?" When Brooke told everyone I couldn't afford to buy presents so I'd made cookies instead, even though I'd given you both a check for $2,000 the week before. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app and turned the screen toward my parents. "Here. Every transfer. Every payment. All documented." Mom took the phone with trembling hands. Her eyes moved down the screen, and with each line, her face seemed to crumble a little more. Easter dinner, I continued, my voice still calm, still controlled. When Brooke said I was too broke to contribute to the family vacation fund. I'd already transferred $1,500. You were planning a trip to Hawaii. I sent the money in March. We thought Brooke sent that, Mom whispered. Thanksgiving 2 years ago, I went on. When Brooke told everyone I was still paying off student loans and couldn't help with Grandma's medical bills. I'd paid $3,000 directly to the hospital. It's in Grandma's records. Aunt Martha set down her drink. Phyllis, is this true? Mom couldn't speak. She just nodded, still staring at my phone. Brooke made a sound like a wounded animal. I was going to pay them back. I was going to. You were going to what? I asked. Continue taking credit for my money while telling everyone I was barely scraping by? You never corrected us, Dad said quietly. You never said anything. I tried, I said. You didn't want to hear it. Every time I mentioned work, you'd say, "That's nice, dear," and change the subject. Every time I accomplished something, you'd ask if Brooke had heard from that wellness brand she wanted to partner with. The truth settled over the room like heavy snow. I'd been promoted to senior director 8 months ago. My parents still thought I worked at a retail store in University Village. They thought I sold phones and laptops to college students. I'd bought a Tesla last year. Paid cash. They'd never asked about it. They assumed I was leasing. I'd taken myself to Paris for my birthday. They'd asked if I'd stayed in a hostel. How long? Mom asked. How long have you been successful? The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Successful? I've been making 6 figures for 4 years, Mom. I bought my first investment property when I was 29. I've been supporting you financially since I was 30. Brooke had started crying. Actual tears, streaming down her carefully contoured face, ruining her makeup. You're ruining Mom and Dad's anniversary. No, I said. I'm just tired of being your ATM and your punching bag. That's when the doorbell rang. Mom looked confused. Everyone's already here. I checked my watch. Right on time. Actually, I invited one more person. Dad moved toward the door and I followed him. Through the frosted glass, I could see a tall silhouette holding what looked like a bottle of wine. Dad opened the door and there stood Richard Morrison, CEO of Cascade Technologies. My boss's boss's boss. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Brooke's engagement ring. Richard, I said, smiling. Thanks for coming. Grace. Wouldn't miss it. He stepped inside, handed me the wine, and then noticed the room full of frozen people. Oh. Did I interrupt something? Not at all, I said. Mom, Dad, this is Richard Morrison. My CO. Richard extended his hand to my father. Mr. Chin, it's wonderful to finally meet you. You must be so proud of Grace. She's absolutely transformed our product division. Dad shook his hand mechanically. CO. Of Cascade Technologies, Richard said cheerfully. Grace hasn't told you about the company? We just hit unicorn status last month. $1 billion valuation. Grace's product strategy was a huge part of that success. I watched the information process across my father's face. Watched him realize what he'd missed. What they'd all missed. In fact, Richard continued, pulling out his phone, we just finalized Grace's new compensation package. She's being promoted to VP of Product. The board approved it yesterday. He showed Dad his screen. That's her new salary. Plus equity, of course. The number on the screen had 6 figures before the decimal point. Mom made a small sound. Brooke had gone completely silent. Grace wanted to celebrate with family first, Richard said, oblivious to the tension. Before we make the public announcement next week. She's one of our most valuable executives. I hadn't invited Richard to gloat. I'd invited him because I was tired of explaining. Tired of defending. Tired of being invisible. Sometimes people only believe evidence they can't dispute. I should let you get back to your party, Richard said. Grace, see you Monday. We'll discuss the VP transition. He shook hands with my parents again, waved at the room and left. The door clicked shut. 43 people stared at me. You're going to be a VP? Dad asked. Yes. Of a billion-dollar company? Yes. Brooke's voice came out as barely a whisper. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at my little sister. The the golden child, the favorite, the one who'd spent years making me feel small while I paid our parents' mortgage behind her back. I did tell you, I said. You just never listened. I picked up my champagne glass, the one I'd set down before this whole thing started, and raised it toward my parents. Happy anniversary, I said. I'm glad I could be here. But I think I'm going to head home now. To my building. In Capitol Hill. I walked toward the door and the crowd parted like water. Mom caught my arm. Grace, wait. Please. We need to talk about this. We can talk, I said. When you're ready to actually hear me. I drove home to my penthouse, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. I poured myself a Real drink, 18-year-old scotch, the good stuff, and stood at the window watching the city lights. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We're sorry. We didn't know. Then one from Dad. Can we meet for coffee this week? Just to talk? And finally one from Brooke. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. For the first time in 3 years I felt like I could breathe. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's just finally being seen.